Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. If I can just start with reminding you that we've uploaded Ambassador Godek's Mindspeak presentation in 3 components. One was his speech, one was the Q&A session, and one was the interview that I did with him after the event. If you get a chance, do have a look. Of course, we got a lot of excitement. I saw him last night and he said, "I'm terribly busy with the President's visit." Madame Lagarde said the following yesterday: "I have a deadline, which is the 30th of June, when a payment is due from Greece. There is no grace, period." Eric Scott Hunsader tweeted, "Some algo wigged out at 1809-12 and spun this beautiful chart of currency pairs," and indeed it is. Home thoughts: "Meet Notch, the lion, king of the Masai Mara, and his 5 sons," and what a photograph that is. Been reading V.S. Naipaul, and I know a lot of people on the continent don't really like him because he tends to look at things with a very critical eye. But listen to this, which when he's describing being on the river, I think in the Congo. "Going home at night, it wasn't often that I was on the river at night. I never liked it. I never felt in control. In the darkness of river and forest, you could be sure only of what you could see. And even on a moonlight night, you couldn't see much. When you made a noise, dipped a paddle in the water, you heard yourself as though you were another person. The river and the forest were like presences, and much more powerful than you. You felt unprotected, an intruder. You felt the land taking you back to something that was familiar, and something you had known at some time, but had forgotten or ignored, but which was always there. You felt the land taking you back to what was there 100 years ago, to what had been there always." V.S. Naipaul, A Bend in the River. Anybody can be decisive during a panic. It takes a strong man to act during a boom. And then another beautiful photograph from Kenya Pick's Golden Hour over the Gong Hills. Political reflections: Putin versus a vast conspiracy. Bloomberg View. To understand this mindset, consider what happened when The Economist published its forecast for 2015, which featured a densely populated illustration on the cover. Here it is. Conspiracy theorists had a field day. The Vigilant Citizen website, which is devoted to ferreting out Illuminati and other occult symbols it says are hidden in plain sight, published a detailed analysis that was reposted on like-minded sites in a variety of languages. Here's a sample. Right under, hopefully the image will be up there now, right under the Pied Piper, we see a young boy with a dumbfounded look on his face. He's watching a game called Panic. The words Federal Reserve in Chi, which probably stands for China, are on top, while the words green light and CIS, which probably means ISIS or crisis, are at the bottom. The little boy watches as his twisted game of Plinko unfolds the same way the clueless masses watch powerlessly while various events unfold on mass media. As the name of the game states, the ultimate goal is to cause panic around the world, as crises are almost randomly generated by those who control the game. And that's on a magazine cover owned by the Rothschilds. That was in January. This week, Pravda, Russia's most popular tabloid, published its own analysis of the Economist cover. It used an expert, Igor Belus, from an obscure group called the Institute of Scientific Research for the Third Millennium, to dissect the illustration. Among other things, he wrote that the presence of the US magician David Blaine behind Putin's right shoulder was a transparent hint that Russia should expect more magic tricks, like the story of the shot-down Boeing. It's not for nothing that a helicopter bearing the inscription "Cropo Dust" is circling in front of Putin. The Rothschilds, a long-time staple of conspiracy theories about nefarious global government, also figure prominently in Belus's text. Putin and his people are now far outside the realm of the conventional. They see themselves as warriors of light in a world suffocated by a Western conspiracy To them, there is more at stake than just the regime's survival. That's what makes them dangerous. Very interesting when you look at that diagram. And how could those symbols have been inserted? It makes you wonder. Alexis Tsipras is holding talks with Putin 12 days before Greece must either pay $1.6 billion to the IMF or become the first Eurozone state to effectively go bust. I'll put up a photograph of Tsipras meeting Putin on Friday. I came across this sentence in an article. It's about 6 months old, but I think it still applies. Years of covert funding from Saudi Arabia of Wahhabi proselytizers did much of the ideological groundwork. This pattern is recurring from the Horn across to the Sahel. And I think that's right. Tourists seek Greek hotel safes to stash cash as bookings soften. Greek resort manager Kostas has started asking in recent weeks about an amenity often ignored in an age of online and credit card payments, reliable hotel safes to stash their money. Clients want to feel secure if something happens, they'll have funds. They're coming with more cash. Tourism generates 17% of GDP in Greece, meaning any slowdown would hit the economy hard. I like this. Yoga can spur economic growth and bolster the nation, Indian guru says. Yoga isn't just about postures, exercise and meditation. It can also boost economic growth and bolster national pride. This is Baba Ramdev, who will help Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Sunday set a world record for the most people doing yoga in one place. The event will mark the first United Nations-backed International Day of Yoga. Put up a photograph of the yoga guru Baba Ramdev. India speaks and the whole world listens, Swaraj told reporters this month. The 21st of June is to be declared as the International Day of Yoga is a clear-cut example of that. Fed may hike just once in 2015 as Yellen strikes less certain tone. And on reflection, I think why she struck a less certain tone was she could see weekend events that there could be potentially market roiling events coming out of Greece, and she didn't want to give a bid to the dollar going into that. And that's my view, that she micromanaged ahead of a potential Brexit. Euro dollar 113.10, Japanese yen 123.12, the pound 158.58. It's had a storming run lately. The Aussie dollar is at 0.7765. Got as high as 78.50, I think. South Korean won 1106.91, Rial 306.59, Egyptian pound 762.89. And when I checked last, the rand was at 1224.46. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index, and on reflection, that's what I think she did. Euro dollar certainly feels like the calm before the storm at this moment in time. I'll put up a 3-month chart. Jamie McGeever through this morning, Greek shares were down 20%. I like this. Peking duck is served with caviar. Looks pretty good to me. And this too, scallop shui mai, among the most popular dim sum options. That looked pretty tasty as well. Eric Scott Hunt said Euro stocks futures ramped almost 3% in 2 minutes. And look at that. They certainly did. Commodity markets, gold at around the 1200 or just below level. Crude oil $60.66. It's in an interesting wedge-like formation, which normally presages a drop or a rally, a pretty meaningful one, so take your pick. Or don't, just by volatility. The water table is dropping all over the world, said J. Famiglietti. There's not an infinite supply of water. I like this, the gleaming club-like entrance to Zuma in Midtown Manhattan. Once upon a time, finance types flocked to steakhouses and pubs after work to spend lavishly, while a certain crowd still does. Many traders are now to be found at Zuma, as locations in fast-growing cities such as Dubai, Istanbul, Miami, grossing more than $200 million in annual revenue. Marvellous food. Not cheap, particularly not in Dubai, but very tasty. Holger Scheipitz, bubble about to burst. China's stocks drop 10% from peak. According to the Frontier Strategy Group and Wall Street Journal, Frontiers, Argentina is finding favour as companies refocus on the frontier, saying among the top 10 destinations there have been some abrupt changes since the previous version of the index was released in January. Angola has jumped from 14th to 5th, Algeria leapt into 6th place from 18th. Venezuela rocketed up from 10th to 3rd. Vietnam tumbled from 2nd to 8th, and Nigeria, which held the top spot since the index was launched in June 2014, has been nudged into 2nd place by Argentina, which faltered from 4th to 1st. Lots of interesting detail there. Coming to sub-Saharan Africa, let's start with elephants. African poaching hotspots found in DNA analysis of tusks and dung. The DNA analysis of elephant tusks seized from poachers has revealed 2 main hotspots for the crime in Africa, a finding that could point law enforcement in the direction of the top criminal networks, a study showed. The examination involved taking genetic samples from large seizures of ivory and matching them against DNA samples of elephant dung to determine where the animals came from. It showed most elephants killed on a wide scale lived in southern Tanzania and northern Mozambique in East Africa, or in a Central Africa region spanning parts of the Gabon, Cameroon and the Republic of Congo. The research published by the Science Journal on Thursday was led by the University of Washington biologist Samuel Wassa. As many as 40,000 African elephants were lost to poaching in 2011. Wildlife trafficking market is worth an estimated $8 to $10 billion a year. It's just outrageous. If you can say we found the ivory in China, but we know it came from South Africa and Kenya, then that's a whole different situation. Then you can start getting convictions. It's awful and a tragedy. I'll put up a photograph of elephants crossing the Ewaso-Nyiro River in the Samburu. Over the past 5 years, the number of Google searches made in Africa has increased 500%. That's the advent of the smartphone and the internet. Burundi's opposition has called on civilians to reduce their consumption of beer, cigarettes, fuel and mobile phones in a bid to asphyxiate the government. Since the start of the protests, analysts say the country has slowly come to a halt, experiencing an economic breakdown. It is an economic battle that we are playing out. We want to asphyxiate the country that is already economically weakened, that has had its foreign resources cut off. Burundi exports very little. Mainly coffee, 72.1% of total exports, followed by tea, 15.7%, manufactured goods, 9.3%, but produces too little of all 3 items to ensure its alimentary self-sufficiency. We can stop paying the municipal tax, even if we face penalties, and accept to pay these later. Belgium's cut funding, so it's a very, very tricky situation. It's a very sophisticated response by the opposition, actually. Put up a photograph of people selling bananas in an open market in a village near Bujumbura. The UN has slammed the South Sudanese president for impeding civilian protection, hindering efforts to protect civilians by blocking UN attack helicopters and surveillance drones, and declaring that UN personnel caught taking photos will be deemed spies. South African oil shares up 4.27% this year. Dollar versus rand. I'll put up a 6-month chart. I think you can go. It can soften up from here. The UK has invited Egypt's Abdel Fattah al-Sisi for talks. Downing Street has confirmed. And, might conclude by saying that the very hard line that President Sisi has taken, particularly against the Muslim Brotherhood, hasn't really cost him anything. Going by his recent foreign policy visits. Egyptian pound, 763. Egyptian EGX 30 is down 3.9211% this year. This is interesting. The US has bought an average 30,000 barrels a day of Nigerian crude this year. This compares to 1 million barrels a day from the African nation in 2010. Nigerian oil shares down 3.45% this year. Ghana, the mighty fallen. This is The Economist. How do you spot an economic crisis from afar? Abandoned building projects are one red flag, so are relentless power cuts. Ghana has plenty of both. Its problems grew more dramatic this month when torrential rain flooded the capital, causing an explosion at a fuel station that claimed up to 200 lives. Disaster that Ghana could ill afford. IMF came to the rescue in February, agreeing to lend Ghana almost $1 billion. Problems far from over. Public debt could reach 70% of GDP this year, up from 43% in 2011. Annual growth, which topped 14% that year after oil began flowing, may dip to 3.5%. The cedi has collapsed more than 25% this year. In fact, has lost over 99% of its value against the dollar since 1992, calculates African Alliance. structural problems, corruption a growing concern. One Accra-based diplomat said the worry is that they're moving in the direction of Nigeria, not Norway. I concluded by saying Ghana is the canary in the coal mine for so many sub-Saharan African countries. President Mahama confirms that if leadership does not get it, you cannot keep raising salaries on the never-never, then the trajectory is one which rapidly ends up being a debacle, as this is. I'll put up a photograph of Dramani Mahama. And then Bloomberg is also talking about rising borrowing costs. They're planning a Eurobond sale. Cocoa output down 25%. I'm still wary of Ghana. They spent their money like drunken sailors with the idea that the Jubilee Field was going to solve all their problems. Ray Zucaro. If they were able to get a guarantee, this is for the new Eurobond, it would basically take out your credit risk. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 5.13% this year. Rhino horn is now sold for $65,000 per kilogram in Southeast Asia, up from $300 in the 1990s. That's extraordinary. Just a few decades, a large population of northern white males has been reduced to a single 3,500-pound bull living in a 10-acre enclosure with round-the-clock guards. There are also 4 females left, 2 in Kenya and 1 each in the United States and the Czech Republic, but none of them are fertile, meaning the population is on the verge of extinction. I put up an image of 2 male rhinos that I took in Lewa, and also a photograph of fishermen sitting in boats as they go for night fishing in Lake Tanganyika at sunset in the town of Rumongi, Burundi. I attended the Queen's birthday yesterday, and Dr. Turner announced a lifting of the travel advisory to Mombasa, Kilifi and other places, which is a welcome and a big positive, but it will take a while to start kicking in. I put up a photograph of Fort Jesus in Mombasa that I took at Christmas. Refer you back to Taleb, who says places that depend on tourism, for example, are particularly susceptible to perceived instability. And it's all about perception. We live in a 24-hour, always-on world. Put up another photograph of the sunset in Mombasa and one of Mombasa Island. I think that was Boxing Day. Kenyan state prosecutor has agreed to charge the Land Secretary Charity Ngilu. Ex-Britam director Rawat to sue if Kenyan assets sold. He held a big stake in Britam. Demanding immediate restitution, has threatened to sue anyone involved in selling off or buying any of the seized assets. The most valuable of these is a large stake in Kenya's Britam that was taken over by a Mauritian state insurer ahead of plans for its disposal. Authorities who stepped in to safeguard client interests of Brahma Bank and its sister company BI Mauritius also claim to have uncovered evidence of a massive Ponzi-type fraud at the insurer. Mr. Rawat now says the liquidity crisis at Brahma Bank was caused by the Mauritian government, with key state institutions and officials withdrawing funds in concert in a campaign of premature encashment. This, he says, was a politically motivated act meant to precipitate the current situation where his assets have been seized and are being sold off. Kenya shilling last trading at 98.07 but got as high as 98.50, I noticed. Nairobi all share down now 0.04% year to date. NSE 20 up 52 points since the 11th of June but down 6.181% so far this year. Tea prices at the Mombasa auction have risen 46% compared to the same period last year. That's a good sign. Thai group buys 6 camps in the national parks. They bought out Chile and Peacock. Yesterday, Williamson Tea maintained its red-hot winning streak. It's rallied 40.38% over the last 4 trading sessions. Safaricom unchanged at 16.85. Kenya Airways closed unchanged at 7, but remains up 16.666% this week. Scan Group renamed to WPP Scan Group, closed unchanged. Nation Media fell to a fresh 2015 low of 108. It's minus an eye-popping 31.55% this year. Equity Group was the most active. They're launching an American Express Gold Card this week. Centum rallied 1.574% to close at 64.50. Reported startlingly good full-year numbers, 159.96% acceleration in full-year profit after tax. Full-year numbers were juiced by some big one-off non-repeat gains, such as the sale of Centum's stake in UAP, But nevertheless, they position themselves to do that, but I think it'll be a hard call to repeat that. Carol Coble rallied 2.42%, Crown Berger, which is up 53.15% this year, rallied 3.66%, and Samir was strong as well. Once again, I'm really grateful that you stopped by. I really am. Thank you. And I wish you a great weekend.